I attended my first PTA meeting at Brooks Global Studies Elementary School in the fall of 2011. I walked into a room of 200 people. I scanned the room. Something didn't look right. Again and again I looked. And then I confirmed it. Of the 200 people in the room, only 6 were men. Where are all the men? I grew up in the Frederick Douglass housing projects in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Statistically, as a teenage Latino male, I would either be on drugs, in jail, or dead before finishing high school. At 16, my family physician introduced me to an organization called The Door. Do you remember a time when you felt like there was no one to talk to? You felt alone. You doubted your self-worth as a teenager? The Door picked up kids like me from this abyss and gave us an ear that we could talk to, a shoulder we could lean on, and a heart of a professional that we could get resources from, as well as also options we didn't have before. That summer, I took my referral card to this discombobulated building on the Lower East Side. I walked in, and I heard the bouncing basketballs. I heard the laughing of youth. I saw the brightly colored graffiti against the brick wall interior. After the tour, I was introduced to my mentor. Tom approached us with his huge companion dog by his side. He wore big black dark glasses, and he had this guide stick in front of him, tapping back and forth. I thought to myself, you can't see me. How could you possibly counsel me if you can't see me? I quickly learned that Tom could see me more clearly and intensely than anyone else I'd ever talked to. He gave me a safe place to talk. He listened. For the first time in his presence, I finally understood what it was to be transparent. Tom and The Door opened a whole new world for me. You see, in my family, we weren't supposed to talk about family stuff outside of the family. I finally had the first time that I could tell him what I was feeling, and especially what I was thinking about. Tom not only helped me navigate my life as a teenager, but he also taught me that the decisions I made today would impact my future. If it wasn't for those regular interactions, I wouldn't be standing with you here today. Fast forward. Now I'm a dad, a 1-year-old daughter, and the second one on the way. You can imagine I had very little time in the day to do things, and it's no wonder that when my church asked me to be the Sunday school teacher for the children's program, I didn't know how I could do that. But with a little prayer and some prodding from my wife, I decided to take on the role as the 4th grade teacher. Quickly, I noticed that some of the kids were rather clingy. They craved for that attention. It seemed like even when I disciplined them, they wanted more. It turned out each of these kids came from single mom family homes. The research shows that 50% of these children are actually clingy. The reason is because the fathers have decided not to engage in their life. It leaves a gap that they want to fill immediately with the first male role model they see. A little further along in time, now I'm a dad of a family of 5 with the addition of my son. With that addition came something else in the neighborhood. Friends. My kids were magnets for all these other kids from the neighborhood to come into our house, eat some of our food, play in the living room. Sometimes I sit and talk with them. Sometimes I play with them, even discipline them from time and again. They all came from single mom family homes, and they were looking for something, and it meant a lot to them each time I talked to them. The data shows the same thing. They're looking for a nurturing environment, a balance of a mother and a father interacting with one another that they can role model and role play in their future. My wife and I went to many parent conferences, and I learned right away that I needed to be an engaged dad. I couldn't be a bystander anymore. I had to know my kids' likes and dislikes. I needed to be part of their journey. Being the breadwinner wasn't enough anymore. I made it my mission at that point to commit myself to them. This is a fact. 75% of U.S. households today have a biological father in the house, but he's not present in the home. It's called paternal deprivation. I saw this more clearly when I was engaging with other dads. We get into the conversation about the kids' schedule. Some of the dads responded like the schedule was a burden. Others responded like they really wanted to be part of that schedule, but they didn't have the time. It was at that point that a verse came to my mind from the scriptures in the Bible. It says, iron sharpens iron. What it means is that men are responsible and accountable to encourage one another, to help each other out, especially when it came to their families. I made it my mission at that point to help these men to experience the same joy that I was experiencing in my house with my kids and my time with them. And so I made it my mission and mantra, iron sharpens iron. The lack of male involvement today is contributing to many social issues: rising crime, poverty, homelessness, disciplinary issues amongst our teenagers, male domestic violence. These ripple into the social and economic issues that we're experiencing in our country today. I was interviewed on TV once, and they asked me, well, what about the women? And I responded, the women are already doing it. They're encouraging one another. They're mentoring each other. The fact of the matter is, the women are doing a great job. The problem is they've been forced to do the entire job. We men have become passive. Now back to the PTA meeting. At the end of that meeting, the president came up to me and she said that there have been many efforts to get the men involved, but they had no response. I started to share, of course, different ideas that I had about how to get the men involved. Have you ever talked yourself into being the chair of a program that you never thought would be created? Before I could object, fate stepped in. And I knew it was time to get started, to get a group of men together and make a difference in the school. Over the last 5 years, we've come up with basically 3 principles that help to get men involved in the schools. The first was we had to find the place where there was a need in the school that the men actually wanted to help in. In our case, at Brooks Global Studies, we decided that it was the carpool lanes and the hallway duty in the morning. The teachers would be doing this role instead of being in their classrooms or getting that cup of coffee to rev themselves up. Second, we had to determine a manly theme so the men would get involved. We came up with this. FBI, fathers being involved. The men took to the hallways and to the carpool lanes. Dressed as FBI agents. The parents did think that the president was in town sometimes. But we made a difference because right away, our 5 guys that started, and that included me, grew into 40 men that were actively participating throughout the school year. Which brought about element number 3. Men don't like being left out of celebratory functions. And we took advantage of the competitive nature of men, which of course led to greater support in the school, greater enthusiasm with our teachers. All the scholastic and all the disciplinary issues that we had were slowly disappearing. Over the past 3 years, it still has value today, where during our open houses, the parents that come in, they see the healthy balance of both male and female parents actively participating in the school. It just didn't stop there. They're reading to them, tutoring them. Mothers and fathers actively participating in their kids' lives for their success in and out of the classroom. And it didn't stop there. It was happening all across the county. Other schools doing the exact same thing. How do we know this? In 2012, the Guilford County Council of PTAs decided to have an award ceremony, and our school actually won Best Male Involvement for a school. At that event, I met with some of the officers of the organization and shared with them the things we were doing at the local level. They lit up. And subsequently, I was voluntold to be the chair of male involvement for the Guilford County Council of PTAs. Yep, the entire county. My committee of 4, that included me, went ahead and we knew that the aforementioned 3 elements, we had to add another element. We knew that we had to have an event. Men like to gather. We wanted them to gather and share their experiences, their successes, all the things that they were doing right, and also share it with their kids. And thus, this came up. The Guilford County Council PTA's Male Summits, a half-day event on a Saturday in March where we would engage leaders of the community who walk the walk to share their experiences of what it is that it takes to be an involved dad or an involved male and the impact it has on kids. 20-minute sessions of this type of information. Why 20 minutes? Because we know men do not have large attention spans. We also had breakout sessions for the children where they engaged in leadership skills and professionalism. The results were obviously very obvious. The men were charged up. We saw that we could bring awareness to how the men were engaging in their communities and their schools. At that point, there was some major highlights I want to share with you of how the men, life-changing as well as also touching to what happened at each of those events. The first year, there was a woman that came to the event, and she came right up to me and she's like, "I'm a dad." I said, "Yes, you are." And I welcomed her in. At the end of the event, she came looking for me. And she rushed up to me and she gave me this rib-crushing bear hug. And she looked at me, this 5'0" single mom, and she said, "I needed this." And I told her, "You got this. You got the support and the help of men whenever you need it." The second year, there was a gentleman that came, and he was already a leader for a group in his school, in his community, but he was a little bit burnt out. You know, leaders sometimes feel like islands. At the end of the event, he left fired up, and he took that fire right back to his group, right back to his community, and they got fired up the entire year. The third year, our theme was to stop the passivity. Start to engage in your kids. All the speakers were on point. And at the end of that session, the men wanted to do more. They stood up. They wanted to get engaged. They wanted to be involved. It didn't just stop there as like a moment of summits. We partnered with the Guilford County School System's Parent Academy to make sure that there'd be workshops afterwards for the men to get engaged the rest of the year. And then in the summer, social functions for the families with the dads involved. The ripple effect, more men involved in the PTAs, more men involved in the classrooms. We're starting to chip away at that passivity. At that summit, that last summit we just had, we also announced one more thing. The first annual Male Engagement Conference at the North Carolina PTA Convention. Yep, the entire state. Want to guess how many are in my committee now? And including me? I grew up in poverty. I grew up stereotyped. But yet I'm a product of a great support system at home and wonderful male role models all throughout my life. It only took the effort of one man to point me to the right door. We all know the facts. We all know the problems in our communities. But it only takes a few good men. I saw something in 2011 that I thought was obvious and not right. And I decided instead of depending on somebody else, I wanted to be that somebody. We know that a few good men can take a truism, the fact that male role models impact our communities positively, impact our children, impact our schools, but we need to give it arms and legs to turn it into a doism with action and results. This is powerful. This is doable. And it's radical because it is different. Take today's different and make a difference in your community tomorrow.